Yeah, we're all facing it, right? I mean, there's especially with AI, it's going to get worse, right? And so, as an organization, you've got to be very strategic about how you go about vetting these platforms. We're seeing so much with AI that even if we implement a platform that we might not have thought had an AI function, all of a sudden they do, and then all of these functions start to overlap. And then, what's the service you're providing to your staff and to your residents? If you have this convoluted cycle, I am extremely excited about the possibility of robotics in the multifamily space. I think that what we're seeing from a price point perspective in the robotics field, with it coming down, it's becoming much more attainable to apply robotics into this space. I think when we look at AI, there's a few aspects. ROI metrics, I would caution some of those larger suppliers to make sure that we have an affordable solution that people can access, right? It's deserved for everyone here. The second layer of approach that we found fascinating is the data layer. And a lot of mid-market operators just simply don't have the bandwidth and don't have analysts in-house to handle the vast amounts of data that we are consuming within this industry.
And here we are back live. Welcome everyone to the show. Super excited and super pumped about our guest today and a conversation we're about to have. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. I want to thank our sponsors for making this broadcast possible. They are Kairos and Coastal Painting Contractors. With this being said, I'm turning it over to my co-host, Chris Moreno. Take it away, sir.
Awesome. Happy Thursday to everyone from the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia, here in the podcast studio. And we have a very special guest today. She is one of the most respected people in PropTech. Not only has she been a founder, she's been an operator. She has been in tech and seen acquisitions. She's seen dispositions. She's seen great tech, bad tech, you name it. But Whitney Kidd, we're very excited to have her today. She joined the Price Company back in 2022. She's the Senior Vice President of Innovation and Technology, very responsible for all types of development of any type of revenue, technology, and growing the portfolio in broader multifamily markets. She has an awesome ability to recognize technology at the earliest stages and how to improve performance. Really also appreciate she built a great collective that we'll jump into a little later. The good friend that we've had on the podcast as well. And that empowers leaders, supports them, brings them together. So in both in real life, online. Yeah, I know Whitney had helped build Rover Score. She used to be at RealPage. And I believe now, Whitney, is it 40,000 or 50,000 beds now that you oversee across the country?
Yeah, a little over 40,000 and growing rapidly every day. We had a great 24 and are looking forward to an exceptional 2025.
Amazing. So without further ado, thank you, Whitney, for joining us. We're so excited to have you. Love to hear a little bit about how you got into, real estate. Was it something you fell into? Was it something you prepared for? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yes, and thank you, Chris and Adrian, for having me today. It's an absolute pleasure to be with both of you. I think the world of you both, and excited to share about innovation and tech today. A little bit about my background, if you've not heard me on other podcasts, I actually grew up in property management. So my family were owner-operator developers right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Nothing major. We had about 150 units, scattered sites all across Mooresville, North Carolina. And my joke is, I started very young, a little bit of a child labor situation where I was about 5 years old walking around collecting rent. But here's the funny part, and what I'll talk about of how I kind of progressed through my career. From my childhood, I said, I am never going to do this property management gig. This is never where I'm going to land. I'm going to be in a different career. And the reason why is because I thought it was such an antiquated process, right? At that point, we were knocking on doors to collect checks and cash back then for rent, right? Just really antiquated processes. And so I just never envisioned a career here because I wanted to be in something that was very forward looking and could incorporate technology. So just a bit of background, I went and got a degree and a master's in public health, totally different sector. And during that time, I continued to work within property management. And very gratefully, I landed at a Riverstone community. If you've been around long enough, you remember Riverstone before they were acquired by Greystar. And that community was really amazing. It was a great team, and Riverstone was just doing things that I'd not seen before in the industry in regards to tech and automation and making these experiences much better for residents and staff. And so they started to roll out a little platform called onsite.com, right? Back in this day, we weren't even leasing online, and started to use this platform. It was very early. We were using it for lease automation and screening and online leasing. And I really loved it. I was like, this is the future. And one day I saw a job opening it was a first sales opportunity at onsite.com in the Southeast. And I didn't think that I had the skill set to do it, but I went for it anyways, which is something we'll talk about later for some advice for young professionals. And that led me into this really exceptional career of chasing my passion. And really, my reason why, even to this day, is to make things better for our site teams through technology as well as our residents. That has just given me a really great path of being with Onsite. It was acquired by RealPage, and then going to found a company all on that same mission of just trying to simplify the really complex nature of working in property management and making sure that you have really satisfied residents at the end of the day.
Whitney, you had such diverse roles, tech companies, founder of a company, and now you work on a property management side. What are some things you learn from this journey? And also, I'm super curious, like what really made you try new things? Because I meet a lot of folks that are in property management, but for the most part, they're on the supplier side or on the operator side. So most of their career, not their entire career, is like on one side. What made you try new things?
That's a great question. I think it's what I've lived by throughout my whole career is to not fear failure, right? And to chase what you're passionate about, because that's where you're going to have the most impact, right? If you're in a career or a role that does not bring you passion and you're not getting excited about it every day or at least every week, right? I think that there could be significant challenges there. So for me personally, I didn't fear failure. If I had an opportunity, I took it, right? And a lot of those opportunities were organic, but some of those I built myself, right? When we went to go build a company, that was something I saw a need in the market with Scott Casey and Taylor Gunn and Janice Rossi, my fellow co-founders, and we built something from scratch. So I think it's the constant pursuit of not being afraid to fail. Steve Wen, former RealPage CEO, taught me that lesson. He said it's okay to fail. You just need to make sure you do it fast and learn from it as you progress. And so I took chances that maybe in roles that I wasn't certain that I would be great at, but really felt some great passion around, and that pursued me all the way over to the owner side. The real reason I came back to the owner operator side is my goal now is to make sure that this industry can see change. And as a supplier, we can absolutely do that. Suppliers are instrumental in making sure that our industry advances forward. However, you have a lot more runway on the owner operator side. So on the owner operator side, I can come in and I have a full sandbox of properties where we can test things. We can see what's working, what's not working, and I can truly speak to what's going to happen on a large scale within the tech side of our industry. And so that's what led me back to Price, is I knew that I would have the flexibility to be able to innovate and to be able to try new things. And it's really been an incredible journey to be. I loved being a supplier, but I also love being an owner operator because we can really delve into many more things than a singular aspect of when I was on the supplier side.
I want to go back a little bit and stay with a failure. Not so many
Yeah.
people are comfortable talking about failure. You talked
Right.
about it quite a bit already, and that's fascinating to me. Could you think of a situation in the past that looked like a significant failure for you, that you just kind of turn the tables, use it and turn the tables, that you turn in a success first? And secondly, what were the lessons that you learned from that particular instance?
I think that failure is often perceived as a negative thing. I think the exact opposite about failure. I think that failure is some of the greatest lessons that you'll learn. We all love to win, and that's easy, right? Winning is easy, but failure is challenging and really expands your knowledge set and makes you look at what's important in your life, your career, and what's important for our industry most of all. And so, if we want to talk specific examples, let's talk the startup. So I'm still a co-founder of Rover. I'm absolutely in full support of everything they do. They're just a really incredible company that's on a mission to be able to quantify the experience of internet across the country, which I think is so important. But I took a big leap of faith to go to the startup side. I was coming from a publicly traded company that was a massive corporate organization, and those are very different lifestyles, right? Startup life, for anybody who's been in it, you absolutely know it's very different than the corporate lifestyle that you'll see in some of the larger companies. And so when I went there, we just had this exceptional growth in the first year, but there were some areas that I wanted to expand on, and I wasn't in the right place to do that. And so for me, I had to take that opportunity to go and support Rover from afar, but also be able to pursue the passions that I was really seeking. And so I wouldn't even quantify that as a failure because that company is doing great and I'm still able to be involved with them, and that's wonderful. but it is something that was not what I envisioned at first, right? When we started Rover, I thought I'd be there for the next decade or two until, that company sold out, and that's just not what happened. But what I was able to learn during that time, Adrian and Chris, was invaluable, right? And the team, and how to build something, and how to live on the edge of fear, right? When you're doing something that no one's ever done before. That's a really challenging place to be. And there's just such amazing growth that I experienced during that time there, that again, I don't even see it as a failure, because it was just such a great learning lesson overall. And that company is doing great things.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I remember meeting with y'all when I was at On Deck, and we had the conversation about Rover Score back in the day. And I think something you touch on is that there's so many people who have been on both sides of the aisle, right? And you understand the problems, the challenges. You see it, like Scott getting excited, with
Yeah.
all his experience, obviously working with you. But I even think about when we met. I think it was probably around 8 to 10 years ago, and I
Yeah.
think it was Austin. Well, I think we had known each other before then, but we had a meal, and you introduced me to the team at Price back then, which is very short foreshadowing. And I think about, getting to spend time. You introduced me to Kirk and Adam and Donna, and seeing how they've built a team and how you think about. So I would love to kind of think about how you think about culture, how you think about teams, especially in an industry as broad, but also as so competitive as real estate, to retain people, because we have overall have a high turnover rate. Do you tend to see at Price that you have a much higher, retention rate? And what are the secrets maybe that you focus on when it comes to building different types of teams and getting the right people who are really focused on the right role?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chris, and good notation around price. And that's a large reason of why I'm here today, is the culture. The first organization I worked with on site, where I met Price through a sales relationship, is really where I saw those cultures combined, right? We used to say culture alignment at its finest between on site and Price, because we were running in similar capacities when it came to culture and how you want the work experience to look and feel. Price has done an exceptional job. I mean, I've worked with so many owner operators in the space, and they're all really wonderful. But Price has got something very unique. It's the family business, but they have grown that family business into something that's magnificent, but have not lost the touch of the family aspect. And so it is very unique at Price, and we would talk about this later maybe, but most of the tenure, so if we're looking at our property managers, our community managers, our average tenure is 8 years. I mean, you don't see that in this industry very often. It's pretty rare. If you look at our corporate teams, the majority of our corporate teams have been here 20 plus years. It's really exceptional. People come here and they stay, and it's because of what Adam Byerly and Kirk and Donna and John Price have built. And that is the ability to do what you're passionate about. If you've ever spoken to Kirk Price, you will hear this from him. And if you haven't, you should go and find him at a conference. But he is all about making sure that every single person at the Price company, whether you're a leasing agent or a part-time maintenance or the COO, that you can chase the dream that you are looking to achieve. And we make that's truly, it's not just something to say. Him and Donna and Adam and John make that happen, right? When I came into the org, I had a dream of making sure we could innovate across the whole industry, not just Price. And so we were able to open up a consulting firm to do just that. And then they do that top to bottom. You talk to anybody that's ever worked at Price or is with us today, that culture is why people stay. And it's something that I'm proud to be a part of. They've done such a great job. And I hope they can maybe share some of their secret sauce, if they will, with other operators, because having that environment really is just a breeding ground for innovation. And not even just in tech, in every area of the business, because people feel comfortable to do.
For those watching in audience that want to move up in leadership roles, I want to ask you to share some pieces of advice that you would have for them to help them be more successful, to get where they desire to end corporate roles.
Sure, this is important, and there's really no direct path, but I'll provide a few tips, and I've listed some on some other podcasts too, so I'll try to give some variety here. But I would say that you need to own your expertise. You need to find what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and really go at that if you're a young professional at 100 miles an hour, right? For me, that was student housing tech. That is what I went into. I got to go into other verticals as well, but that's where I started. And I became an expert there, that then gave me the opportunity to become an expert in other areas. I think that's extremely important. And you also need to seek out rooms where decisions are being made. So whether you're a young professional or you're in the middle stage of your career, I really encourage you all, if you haven't already done it, right now, right, within your organization, reach out to your COO, your CEO, some of your top executives, and just ask them if you can maybe sit in a meeting or sit in a room that you're not normally invited to. I think that's incredibly important because you're going to learn an immense amount, and you're also showing initiative to ensure that they know that you want to be there and you want to learn and help better that organization. So I think those are critical components. You've got to try to put yourselves in the room that you need to be in. And that's all done through effort and also owning your expertise. So become that expert in the room, which you can easily do if you, again, find what you're passionate about.
I love that. And I think that dovetails into a question I have, which is Erica White actually posted a question on LinkedIn. And Erica's a great friend. We've had her on the podcast. She's local. Obviously, you and her, I believe, co-founded the W Collective together. Is that right?
We did, yes.
You did. And so, I think a lot about, I have many women mentors in my life from business, not just real estate, but other sectors I get advice on. And I think a lot, I'm curious, I count you as one of those mentors over the years. I'm curious to think about like how, you've championed a lot of women into leadership, mentored them in student housing, multifamily. But what really motivated you to take that action to actually build this organization? And like, maybe some of the metrics you're tracking or some of the progress you've seen since you built it.
Yes, yeah, and Erica White, dear friend of mine. We have a funny story, actually. I just have to share it if you haven't heard it. We went to the same college, we worked at the same apartment community, and we had the same major all at the same time and never knew each other. It's a pretty wild story, right? We didn't meet until after college, and we literally worked at the same apartment community. Pretty wild. But we got to meet afterwards, and to my point earlier of making sure you're in the room and making sure you're connecting with people in your career, she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'd love to have a 10-minute virtual coffee with you just to get to know you." And I had been doing a little bit of women's work in student. And the reason why I was doing it is because there was nothing there, right? Just like a startup, I saw a need and we took action on that need. And Erica, we had already done a few items, but Erica came in and she just had this energy. Chris and Adrian, you had her on the show. She's absolutely incredible in every aspect. And she had this energy that just took it to the next level. And so we said, how can we, some of the more informal events, how can we formalize this? How can we make something that is really going to impact women across the business for years to come? And that's where the W Collective came in. And it's something where we get together at conferences. We are honored both with NMHC student and with the Interface Conference Group to have a session every single year of women executives. We also have a scholarship every year for emerging leaders to come and have an opportunity to speak, to attend a conference if they have not done that so far, and to interact with all of the board, which we think has been really impactful. And through some of these initiatives, what's come out of this, and I think this is what I'm most proud of in my career. I mean, all the fun tech stuff has been incredible, but what we've done in the W Collective is what I'm most proud of. One of the largest items we did is we were at a conference. This was very early on, and we always ask a question at the end of each panel, which is, if you could change the industry or if you could change one thing, what would it be? And we were going down the line, and I had just had my first daughter. And I was really in the depths of coming back from maternity leave and going through that whole experience. And so my ask for the industry was that we would provide a better family leave policy for all of our employees and infertility coverage for all employees as well. And it was just something I was actually very nervous to say at that point in my career because it was outside of our normal business conversations that we typically have at these conferences. But what came from that is immediately after that conference, it was about, say, 3-4 years ago, we had over 15 operators in the student housing space enhance their family leave policies and infertility coverage policies. And that has since impacted thousands of families across this country. And just that one item alone, we're going to do a lot more than that. We continue to talk about different topics and really chase our dreams of how to help women in business. But just that one item for us really sent us into an evolution of how we could continue the W Collective and make an impact on women in this business, which I think is just so vital in today's time.
That's great. And this is really interesting. I appreciate you sharing some of the metrics that you shared and some of the things that you've done. Is there a focus on both a remote? Is it also a focus on events and in person? Like, what is the game plan for this year for the W Collective? Is it a combination of both?
That's a great question. And it's something that Eric and I and the board, we have an amazing board that we work with, Donna Price and, Ashley Poyer at Peak Made, just some amazing women across there. So what we're trying to find is the ability to expand the W Collective. Full transparency, we all have full-time jobs that are incredibly demanding. And so you all have been there trying to find the space to expand and promote more current activities that we have, though, the scholarship will launch here in the next few weeks, and that's for the Interface Conference Group that's in April, Interface Student Housing Conference. We'll have a session there, and then we also have sessions planned throughout. At every conference where we have a session or a W Collective event, we also have an after hours event too to bring people together. Want to, just let everyone know here too, what's different about the W Collective is it is amazing to get a group of women together in a room. Where we're a little bit different though, is we like to see all of our allies in the room too. We think that's where real change happens, is when we come together. And so we'll have happy hour events, we'll have cocktail hours, all these fun things where people can get together, both women and our allies, and really talk about how we can advance women in the industry. And so I would love to share, we have a LinkedIn group that you can join if you're interested to hear more about what we're doing. And we will all launch the scholarship. You'll see that all across LinkedIn here shortly. But as it comes to more events, we're actually looking for more people to contribute to the W Collective. And so if you are interested in any capacity, whether you're a supplier, whether you're an owner operator, wherever you land, we would love to have you come in and share your ideas. We've gotten some amazing ideas from our local teams, but would really like to take this opportunity to encourage and welcome more women to come into the space and really help out with the W Collective efforts so that we can expand it further in 2025.
I want to give a shout out to all of you that are watching us in record numbers. Thank you so much. Drop a line in the comments and ask a question for Whitney. We're watching the comment boxes. And with that being said, I'm actually going to take a question from Jeff right now. He's asking you, how important would you say is the service, training, and support that technology firms need to provide to the industry? What I'm seeing consistently is that tech is acceptable, but the day to care is severely lacking. Coupled with high velocity of change at properties, a lot of tech goes by wayside, flatters, and then fails.
That is an exceptional question, Jeff, and I couldn't agree with you more. So to answer, and Jeff, we're in very similar passion fields with smart home technology space, but I couldn't agree more. I have seen in my career on the supplier side so many great product sets just be misutilized because there's not enough support around that product, and there's not enough structure around either a pilot or a larger scale implementation to prove concept to then further it out into the portfolio. And so that's something at Price we have been very strategic about. And then part of my innovation role is ensuring, I'm here innovating. I've got all the fun new ideas. The team, they sometimes love it. They sometimes hate it when I bring new ideas to the table. But we have a very robust training team and operations team to go along with that to make sure that when we are starting with a new initiative, that first and foremost, we have set KPIs. It didn't used to be this way, right? We used to just try things because maybe we like the sales rep and it sounded great. But now it's a very structured process for us where we know what we're trying to achieve and we measure it along the way during that pilot process and then evaluate, right? If it's a good fit, we're going to continue forward. If it's not achieving those KPIs, then we're going to move in a different direction. So I think that's a really good way to go about it. Also, if you're a company, and this is, we're a mid-market operator, we're not, a top 50 by any means, but if you're a company that does not have that support internally, I truly encourage you to work with a consultant, to work with that supplier potentially, because there's a lot of resource on the supplier side too to help you through that, just to make sure that you can make sure when you're putting some effort and time into new technology initiatives or new initiatives at your company, that you're making sure that they're measured adequately and then implemented adequately. And you've got to support your community teams. They are all very overwhelmed with everything that we're throwing at them. So you need to be strategic and understand, if we're going to roll out AI in January, let's make sure we don't throw robotics on them in February, right? We actually have a calendar. I work closely with Tony at the Price Company who leads our training. And she's like, okay, Whitney, we've got to wait till March on this one because our teams need a breath in between some of these new initiatives. So being very strategic about how you're implementing and when you're implementing the tech is going to be vital to its success.
That's really helpful and great question from the LinkedIn. We have another question on LinkedIn that actually kind of dovetails on that around, many things. This is from Brandon, and question is around analyzing smart tech in the communities. Mm-hmm. What, when you're analyzing the process, whether it's like on an ROI, you talked about KPIs, but some things you can't always have a specific ROI to, like, I spent $84 on this unit and I'm going to get $254 back. Are you oftentimes looking at surveys out there from maybe like, other organizations, I'm thinking of like Grace Hill or something, to tell you, hey, there's a feeling, even like a rating on an apartment building, a 4.6, I'm sure you have metrics of a 4.6 building versus a 3.2, there's some kind of lift, but is it an exact dollar amount every time, or are you looking to other kinds of signals and KPIs to tell you those things when you implement them?
It's a challenging one, right? And so I grew up in the school of Steve Wynn, as I mentioned earlier at RealPage, where he said everything has to have a quantifiable ROI. One of the harder tasks that I had to learn from him, because as you mentioned, Chris, some things are not very clear cut on how to quantify an ROI. So I'll walk you through exactly how we feel about smart home. And smart home is not something that we did aggressively before I started. This is about a 3-year-old initiative for us. I do think that for the vast majority of tech, you can quantify in some level. So for smart home, there's multiple ways, right? We're looking at smart leak detection, easy quantification, right? You have one leak, one major leak, you have already returned on that metric and investment for the capex there. Smart thermostats, that one is, I will tell you, the easiest thing in the world for us to quantify, especially in student housing, where people are a little bit more willy-nilly about how they live in their apartment homes. So some of those are just so simple from an energy efficiency standpoint, from a risk mitigation standpoint as well, frozen pipes, right? If people have turned off the heat and gone home, over the winter break, those things are very easy. Where it gets more complex and where we have focused at Price is when you get into some of the smart lock solutions. And that's something we've dove into this year, and I'm very proud of, because we were one of the very first operators in the student housing space to have a full mobile only credential process. So we moved them in Entrata, that's our property management software. They receive access, that's our entire community, that's every common area door, that's their unit door, and they're able to have a full self-service move-in experience if that's what they wish. Now that is a little bit tougher to quantify though, right? We have to look at surveys, Chris, which we do all of the time. We're looking at survey data, but we've also, again, from the school where I came from, we found that through our surveys, students, and this is what's coming for all of our conventional operators here, they're willing to pay for tech packages and tech experiences within their apartment home. That has been 100% validated. And so we have been able to implement and underwrite on every single deal a tech fee that is going to include the best high-speed internet possible for what we have allocated to the CapEx there, and a full smart home suite at every deal. It's very rare that we don't. It's almost on every single deal unless they have existing technology. One client's actually outside of Price that we worked with on the Iris Technology side. They're going to see a $1.5 million return over 4 years, right? Because of what we put in. That is easy to quantify. And working with our business development teams, I've learned that's very important to make sure that you can do that. So if you're looking at smart home, and I'll talk more about it later, I think those are the easier ones to quantify. Some of the others can be a little bit harder to do so, but finding a metric that works for you and works for, especially if you're in third party, for the ownership groups that you serve, is going to be vital for the success of that product.
And now a word from Dean Fungawing, founder and CEO, Kairos.
Just know that the days of being able to push things onto renters insurance is going away very, very quickly. And the solution that sits in between the real estate owner and the insurance company is the solutions that we provide. Real-time risk data, what we call building telematics. It lets you know what is happening in real time. That's the water leak detection solution. We can combine that solution with shutoff valves, which is a more capital intensive project and it's not for everybody. You can do it on the beginning of a building's life cycle. So if you're constructing a building, I highly recommend that you start with automated shutoff valves and leak detection solutions, because now you're providing sort of this blanket gold standard of like risk management protection for the entire life cycle of the asset. It's like, imagine just never having catastrophic issues in that building and being able to hand that off at disposition and saying, look, we haven't had historical losses. We haven't had historical insurance claims. You can acquire this asset at a much better value, right, comparative to someone else, because our maintenance record is stellar.
I would like to get your take next on how do we vet technology and how do we make it actually easier for the end user to deal with technology at the site level. And I'm going to give a little bit of a context, Whitney. Last year at PropTech, there was a panel that were talking about the tech and how do we vet, like just around what I'm about to ask right now. One of the panelists said that at our company, leasing agent, so entry-level employee, needs to be proficient in 63 different pieces of software. And then
Wow.
the other one replied, said, well, you're still doing good, we're at 67. So it seems like it's, from conversations that I have one-on-one with other operators and, other people at the site level, it seems to be a fairly common problem, right? How do you approach this and how do you solve this at your management company? How do you, what's your angle, and maybe you have some tips to share with the audience, because I think there's a question that a lot of us would love to get an answer for.
Yeah, we're all facing it, right? I mean, there's especially with AI, it's going to get worse, right? And so as an organization, you've got to be very strategic about how you go about vetting these platforms. What I've seen lately, I was actually just talking to the CEO of Travis, which is one of our preferred partners. We're seeing so much with AI that even if we implement a platform that we might not have thought had an AI function, all of a sudden they do. And then all of these functions start to overlap. And then what's the service you're providing to your staff and to your residents if you have this convoluted cycle? And so at Price, what we have done a great job of, I think, is to be constantly evaluating that. And we do that with a cohesive team. So again, I like to bring the fun ideas. Adam Byerly does as well. But then we sit at a table with our operations team, our training team, and even site members that are going to come and provide perspective and ensure, are we duplicating an item? Are we making something more complex that we don't need to? And then looking also at what we have standing. So if you're looking at a new solution, I really encourage everyone to do an evaluation at that point of everything that you have sitting on the table currently. So we found in this past year that we were able to eliminate 6 to 7 different software providers because we have duplicative services across some of the new innovations that we have rolled out. So looking at that consistently and also gaining feedback from your site teams, I think is incredibly vital. We all have not been on sites in years, right? I go and see them, we do all of that, but I don't live the day to day like they do. I don't experience what they experience. So having them in the room for those conversations is vital. And also having different areas and different business units in those conversations is going to be important. Run into it multiple times this year where we have overlapping services, and then it's where does this live, right? That's the big question. And a lot of people will roll these things out and the site teams have to figure that out. So I think from a corporate team perspective, just making sure you're very diligent around functionality, what's working, what's not. Making sure marketing is in the conversation, operations is the conversation, because even if it's a data product, there could very well be some overlap that you're just not seeing in your business function.
I love that. It reminds me of the days. So, you obviously, how many states are you on now? 50,000 units?
So we are across 20 plus states currently.
Amazing. And so I used to work at Macy's corporate, and one of the challenges is we had stores in 49 states, I think it was. And the hardest part was consistency. It's easier for us to buy the same thing in every store, but you got regionality. And I think you just hit on something, obviously, understanding duplication, the difficulty of the on-site staff. But I'm kind of curious, as you said, you tie in marketing, you tie in operations and all these folks. How do you balance the consistent messaging, consistent experience of a Price building with, thinking about whether it's student housing, whether it's, families, whether it's something in Florida versus up in Boston or another market. So I would love to hear your thoughts of how you think about that. Do you take into the site level, are you looking at reports on the local locations? Or are you looking at your competition? How are you evaluating that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think for us, especially since we're primarily serving universities, you have to be very specific to that market. So Price, we have brand standards that sit across our portfolio, which is really helpful. But I do still think that assets and the specific geographic nature matter, right? I've talked to some larger operators that are trying to apply, like you did at Macy's, that hospitality approach, right? Where everything's very brand consistent. I think that there's definitely some opportunity there, but in students specifically, we typically only have these residents for 3 to 4 years at max, right? We're lucky if we have them that long. So making sure we're meeting them where they're at to us is more important. And that may be for the sake of our brand standard, right? But if we're giving them the best service at that particular market, I think that's where we win. We would love to have, consistency across the board, but certain assets do demand certain feature sets, certain technologies that others do not. In addition to that, I think there's a real challenge in third-party management because all owners have very different perspectives of what they're willing or not willing to pay for. So for us, I think it's meeting our customers where they are to provide that consistency, Chris. Very challenging thing to do, but for us, it's more important that we're meeting them there, being market specific versus trying to have, the cohesive brand that's the same in Boston as it is in Florida. I know that's very popular right now, but for us, just with our specific clientele, we haven't gotten there quite yet.
We have another question from the audience, a very interesting one. It comes from Danny. He's saying the PropTech space oftentimes feels oversaturated. So aside from word of mouth, existing brand awareness, or the general need to implement a new solution, what approach from suppliers tend to catch your attention enough to justify exploring new tech or a new partnership?
Oh, good question there. And I believe it's not oversaturated, but it is very busy. I will say that, Danny, good question there. It is extremely busy. For me, it's transparency, right? We're a company that can build alongside another. We don't expect solutions. We're very open to early stage companies because we have the talent set inside to help build those and transform them in the space. Here's what I look for most. I look for transparency, and we'll talk about this later with how do you really attack a specific market set like student or military or urban markets. I want transparency. If you come in and you tell me that conventional market rate is the exact same as student, which I hear at least once a week on a demo, you've lost us, right? I would rather you tell me we're not quite there yet in student, but we would love to learn from you, right? We'd love to learn and grow. We haven't had a student client yet. Then say, oh, well, it's all the same. We can do it, right? Let's talk and be transparent so we know there's some very distinct operational differences in student housing, military housing, and then conventional market rate. They operate differently. So for me, it's a provider that is open, someone who is willing to be transparent about where their product is and then what the mission is and what they're headed towards. We are also very interested in companies that are dedicated to multifamily. I will give this piece of advice to every supplier. It is hard to break into this industry. Chris, you did it. You did a great job at it. But you do need to understand the importance of relationships here. I've even seen some very large organizations that have been bought out recently that think that they can come into the industry and not really put in the effort and the time to the relationship aspect of this business. I really encourage everyone to dive in full on. If you need some help there, Chris is one of the best at it, I will say, and make sure that you are really giving back to this industry as much as you're trying to take from it as you're growing a business, because it's very vital. We are super relationship driven, always will be. I don't think that's ever going to change. And so I hope that everybody that's trying to make a difference and make an impact stand out among the rest on the supplier side. Put time in this industry, give back, be part of boards, be part of NAA councils, whatever it is, be a part of our industry, and I promise you it will reward you tenfold on the other side.
I appreciate the kind words, Whitney. Again, great mentors who have,
Yeah.
Who helped me 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I didn't know jack about the industry. And instead of going out and selling, he said, hey, listen, help, support. Appreciate the kind words and learn from you. Obviously, one of my favorite topics, the future of PropTech, the future of technology in real estate. Obviously, you're a recognized leader. You have seen it all. You continue to see the innovators, the early stage companies, as well as working with some of the largest. So I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts. You were an early innovator as well with RETC, NMHC and the new steering committee as a VC, as an owner and an operator, and help shaping that. So as we think about everything you're seeing, look into your crystal ball. What are maybe some things you're really excited about that other people, and maybe many people are saying that's not possible, because you've seen the impossible become possible. What are some things you're really excited that you think is going to make a big impact? Maybe not today, but maybe over the next 3 to 5 years that you're having your finger on the pulse.
This is an exciting question, and I think Blake Miller might be on, who's one of my buddies, that we get to talk about all these new fun items that are coming up. And so, we can talk about AI in a bit, right? AI is incredibly exciting. I do not want to discount it, but we're all talking about it. So let's talk about something new that is exciting us and that we're actioning on. We actually actioned on yesterday. I am extremely excited about the possibility of robotics in the multifamily space. I think that what we're seeing from a price point perspective in the robotics field, with it coming down, it's becoming much more attainable to apply robotics into this space. So the Price Company and Iris Technologies, our consulting division, we have purchased our first humanoid robot. It's from Unitree, a company based in China. And it's the G1 EDU, if anybody is curious. And it's a full humanoid robot, right? Like what you would anticipate. And it's a full R&D cycle. So a lot of people keep asking me, well, what are the applications? To be transparent, we don't know yet, right? We have to do the work. It's not been done in the space that I've seen. And if anybody's doing it, please come and chat with me, because we're so excited. But I think that robotics is where we're all headed. And not just multifamily. I think it's multi-industry. For us, even right now in year one of R&D, I want y'all to think about, especially at the community level even, if you had a meet and greet with a humanoid robot, how much traffic could you drive, right? How if you took it in a common area shopping center, how many people would be interested and how many leads you can generate just out of the box, right? No development. And then once we get further than that, can it handle grounds for us, right? Can it help with our curb appeal and keeping our communities clean? Can it solve the age-old challenge that we're all very familiar with packages, which has been on the top of my list for a very, very long time? So if anybody's interested in what we're doing, follow us, reach out to me. I am exhilarated about the robotic space and what we're going to be able to do. But I would also say for people that aren't there yet, and even my own COO, he's like, Whitney, it's a little bit too far down the line for me. You're going to have to give me some proof of concepts, which is fair. Watch what we're doing, and we're happy to share, but also start to think about where we're going to be in 10 years. And if robotics are a real thing in this industry, access is going to be the number one concern, right? If you still have brass keys on your doors, this is not something that's going to work for you. We need to start thinking about smart home technology cohesively across all of our assets in the country and outside of our country globally, because that will be the pathway to robotics really being successful.
I love that, Whitney. And but I thought we already solved packages. That packages are
Sorry,
now
Chris.
perfect. They're solved. They're done. We moved on. No, I'm kidding. No, I agree. And that's why I always get excited and curious. One of the things I ended this, by the way, Whitney did an amazing job for everyone who is at NMHC or knows about NMHC. Whitney did an amazing job of preparing the speakers and the audience for a great topics. And one of the things we ended the session with was to stay curious, because sometimes you discount people building a space because you're like, oh, everyone's already solved that. It's done. No one can build anything new there. And then all of a sudden someone comes with a new vision or a new out insight. So one of the things I think, Whitney, of what you just hit on, I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts around if I'm trying to build something new. There's so many challenges and barriers for me to be able to go and get help and get support. So many people, it is a very slow moving industry. So how do you think about, and by the way, there's people building in Atlanta, robotics. So like robotic dogs, I'm seeing drones to help with crime in apartment buildings, but it's so expensive to build this hardware. As you know, you see it all the time. What advice do you have for people when they see technology and to think about, okay, where do I go for support? So is there any places you went for support? Number one. And number two, is it going to the strategic customers? Is it going to get capital? What advice do you have for folks?
Yes, I would say first and foremost, it's your peers, right? I already mentioned Blake Miller, who's one of the founders of Homebase that was acquired by Quext. Him and I are just total tech nerds, and we love it. We just get together and talk about what could the future be. We're also big all-in podcast junkies, and so they're talking a lot about robotics right now. And so I would say talk to your peers, and you don't have to be. And this is what our mission was with Iris and what we're doing at Price is you don't have to be at the forefront. We're happy to do that, right? The Price company is happy to be at the forefront of some of these innovations, and we're happy to learn with you. I think collaboration among our industry is the only way that we will start to shift from slow adopters, as you mentioned, which we absolutely are, to some of the early stage adoption we're seeing in other industries. So contact with your peers. When it comes to cost perspective, I think start small scale, right? You mentioned, can you go and raise capital? We're blessed at Price. We have some R&D funds set aside. And so, but robotics are getting very inexpensive. I mean, some of the dog robots that you're mentioning, the canine robots, they're $1,500, $1,600 at this point. So, I mean, think about the humanoid robot we bought was under 30. So think about if I had a robot that could do grounds for 10 years, so let's give it 5, right? The average lifespan on hardware. It could do it for 5 years. How much have we saved that particular asset if we can figure that out? So again, lean on your peers, learn from those that have the ability to innovate, and don't be afraid to collaborate there, right? Ask us questions. We are wide open at Price. We're happy to help where we can to try some of those new exciting ideas and then help them apply to the broader industry.
Whitney, I have a curiosity about artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
From an operator perspective, how are you looking at, from a strategic point, at artificial intelligence? Now, I had conversations prior with a founder, and he says, well, AI is like pretty much in everything, right? When we're building, AI is like part of it. It's not like something separate. But I would like to get your take of, how are you approaching from an operating standpoint? Is there a strategy? Is there something that, you're considering when you're looking at, AI as a technology as a separate thing? Not just something that enhances like different processes or helps people writing better emails or whatever that might be doing. What's your approach on that?
For us specifically, we ran an AI RFP last year. It was something I was heavily delved into, obviously something very at the forefront of our industry and others right now. I think when we look at AI, there's a few aspects. One, to Chris's point earlier, ROI metrics. I think some of those were very early stage or are somewhat challenging to quantify. And so some of these larger AI companies coming in with very high price points, it makes that barrier to entry much more challenging for our space. So I would caution some of those larger suppliers to make sure that we have an affordable solution that people can access, right? It's deserved for everyone here. Another approach that we're looking at is platform-based AI. Like you mentioned, every company has some form of AI, but you need, in my opinion, to have a central AI partner. For us, that's been Stratus, based out of London, and they have taken a different approach. They do all the great AI things you think of, right? Like they have the chatbot, they can respond to emails, they can do all of these things. That's wonderful. But the second layer of approach that we found fascinating is the data layer. And a lot of mid-market operators just simply don't have the bandwidth and don't have analysts in-house to handle the vast amounts of data that we are consuming within this industry. And what we found in Traptis is they have the ability to pull in many forms of data, even down to our email, right? You would be shocked that, we all think that everything's going through the property management software at the communities. We were wrong. It's not. There's still just so much sitting outside in just your regular Gmail or Outlook, so many data points that we're missing. And so they've provided a very cohesive data set to not only look at where we can improve at a specific asset level, but also understanding our customers, which was my favorite part. I'm a big fan of the funnel team and Tyler, and they really sent me on a mission after their conference of understanding our customer better. That's something our industry can absolutely improve in. And that's what we've gotten within our AI platform as well, is I can tell you who the happiest customer in our portfolio is and who the most upset customer is. And also our agents have access to that data. So if I have a brand new agent on the ground, they can look and say, hey, Adrian's been with you for 6 months. He's a little bit upset because he's had some noise complaints about his neighbors, but he's excited to renew and would like to know more, versus a brand new agent walking on and not knowing Adrian at all. So for us, it's not just the automations that come from AI, but it is also the data service that you can see. And you can just do so much more than we could 5 years ago without AI platforms. So I would say look cohesively when you're exploring AI and don't just get caught up in the buzzwords, right? Make sure that that platform is something that you can expand and grow different AI functions in. For us now, if we get a new service, like let's say we just rolled out Opinion, really cool platform, right? Amazing. They have some AI functions, but we've said, no, we have a singular platform with Traptis. So we're rolling in and connecting those AI functions into the Traptis platform. So really complex to do right now with everything that we have. But if you find a great partner, I think that makes it easier throughout the process.
Yeah, as you talk about it, there's so much data out there, and AI can get confused. It can sometimes have the
Mm-hmm.
wrong answer. And yesterday on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, I saw something blow up around different people posting competitors about who was the best, asking AI what was the
I
best of
saw
their
it.
space.
Yes,
And it's
yes,
like,
yes.
I know those companies. We don't
Yeah.
have to name them, and it was blowing up because everyone's like, well, no, mine says this and mine says that. What does yours say? And everyone was different. And you're right, it's based on your data, and so you can
Right.
have bad data, like just like you can have bad advice. And so you talked about like leveraging that data. And so how do you think about, as you have, like you said, there's so much data within our emails and our systems and
Mm-hmm.
our tools. So if you're thinking about all this data, how are you helping your teams and making sure they're really trained up front with the prompts, with the right dashboards, and then making sure that they're not getting bad data to make bad decisions? And how do you go about that? Is it bringing in consultants? Is it because DeepSeek and AI, they're all, it seems like every day
Right.
if you watch the news, it changes. So what are your kind of like your that you found to be successful for you of bringing in the right processes for your team to implement it?
It's something that we're still working on in full transparency, but I think where we are at least heading in the right direction is there's dashboard fatigue across all industries, corporate, community level, outside of multifamily, there's dashboard fatigue and data fatigue. And so finding a central platform where that all can live is extremely important. For us, we use Domo on the BI side. And so that is what we're trying to attempt to be, that singular dashboard for us and where data truth lives. And of course, we have our AI platform that's helping us aggregate that data. So I think it's stress testing your data is a good tip I would give, Chris. So we have a great person, Andrew Belcher, who's leading our business intelligence initiatives. And he is stress testing our data all the time to ensure that the quality data in is going to be the quality that we need for the output later down the road. So having someone that is looking at that data, even if it's your community teams, I think they can actually sometimes tell you faster than a corporate team member if data is looking off or not correct. But finding great partners and making sure that you have a strategy around what data is important to you is going to be an extremely important piece, because there is so much out there that you could just get lost in analysis paralysis. So I think making sure you're defining your key KPIs across your company, and then as you bring in new data sets, ensuring that that is going to give you the best result and supplement whatever KPI that you're focused in on.
Want to go back a little bit to artificial intelligence. There's a theory out there that artificial intelligence is going to become so powerful that at some point it'll gain a mind of its own, and it'll just go completely separate from humans, and
Yeah.
maybe it'll go ahead and kill us. We'll just we'll become inferior to AI. Is that a concern to you? Is that something that's like a real scenario or not?
Listen, I think understanding, and I am by no means the expert that you're going to see, and Sam Altman and Elon, nowhere close, never will be. But I think from understanding them and understanding where AI can go, there is a possibility. There is a risk with AI, just like there was a risk in the .com era, right? With data security and several other functions. I think it's very paramount of our industry to get ahead of this, which is why we decided at the Price Company to be a part of RETC with NMHC. Because if we're not really closely following this, there could be use cases, and we've seen this with other software sets in our industry, that get away from us, right? Where we really were not prepared for what was going to happen. So being a part of RETC is something important to us to make sure that we're helping establish those guidelines and get together as an industry to set standards and ensure we're doing the right things, but also listening to your external peers. So I mentioned earlier, I'm a massive fan of the All In podcast. I listen to it religiously every week, and I really get a great concept. They have people like Elon and Sam on all the time, really starting to listen, or have whoever your tech innovation expert is in your organization, have a pulse on what's happening outside of our space, because we're, again, usually a couple years behind what others are seeing in different industries. So really having a pulse there so that we can be ahead of any risks. I hope AI really becomes an exceptional thing, and I think that it will, but we do need to be careful. I mean, we are seeing some possibilities that it could be, it's got its own brain, right? It's learning every day and learning at a much more rapid rate than any of us can. So I'm not the one that can tell us the exact answer, but I am following those that may have it very, very closely.
Yeah, it's a little scary sometimes when you see the robots. It reminds me of that movie, what was his name? Tony Stark. When he has all the
Yes,
robots on stage, and he says, "No, they're good robots," and then they
yes.
start, obviously having the weapons. Yeah, it's kind of questionable. They're supposed to keep us safe. They're supposed to help us, but yeah, if they are misprogrammed to do the wrong thing, right? So you got to make sure AI is in the good hands, right? One thing we like to ask is, if you had one piece of advice for those out there in the industry thinking about they're navigating innovation, they're thinking about leadership, maybe they're thinking about their next role. Should I be a founder? Should I join a team? Should I level up, my career? What's maybe a great piece of advice you love to share with others, and maybe something you've learned from someone else, from one of your mentors? And feel free to call them out if you like.
Yes, yeah, I always love to do that. I think so. One of my mentors is Len Musel. He's the CEO of PayReady. I have many mentors, Donna Price, one of them, Steve Wynn, one of them, that I've learned tremendous amounts. But the one thing I learned from Len in the early days of OnSite, when I was very early in my career, is to stay relentlessly customer centric, right? No matter what you do, stay customer centric, whether you're on the owner operator side or the supplier side. That's something I learned from him, and I think is the reason that I'm where I'm at today in my career, because my customers always come first, no matter what. That's what's important. We're here to serve our customers, whether they're residents or whether you're a supplier serving an owner operator. I think that's extremely important, and something that everybody should keep center focused at all times, no matter what role that you live in. It's incredibly important to keep that in mind. I also think, as a leader, and something I've learned from many leaders across my career, is just to make sure that you're fostering a culture of adaptability. We have a joke inside of the Price Company. If someone's saying, "Oh, we do it because that's always the way that we've done it," right? We've all heard that a million times. That means we need to go and take a look and rip it apart. Stay adaptable. Make sure you're collaborating across your departments. I don't think business units should ever live in their own worlds. I think we all need to work together within an organization and always continuously learn, right? And if you're not the expert, and this is what Donna Price says often, she got a question on a panel about AI, and she said, "Listen, I'm not the one that can answer that question for you, but I've hired someone that can." And so making sure you're ensuring that you have the team, especially if you have the ability to do so, have the team there, especially in this age of AI and vast technical adoption that we're seeing, that can support you in a lot of these initiatives, because it can be very complex and some of it's scary, right? When we start to talk about robots and some of the others. So make sure that you have a great team in place on the technical side to support you and be a part of those processes.
Whitney, it's been amazing having you on today. I
Thank
think
you.
that there's a category of our audience that just loves the robots. I've seen so many comments about the robots. So you feel, maybe we should do an episode about the robots alone.
We could have her. We could have her on, and she is a her, right? I think we're going to name her
Yes.
Donna. It's still up in the air, but yes. So would love to, bring her in. We'll have her in the next. I believe she'll be here in 6 weeks, and so if you
Wow.
want to have a follow up, I think that'd be really fun, and we can bring her on and show her off.
We'd love that. Count us in for that conversation, for that
Awesome.
experience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
We're grateful to have you on here. Thank you to all of you in the audience for engaging, for being here in record numbers today. And we hope to get you back here, not next week, but the following week. We're gonna have another amazing guest. I want to thank our sponsors from Kairos and Coastal Painting Contractors for making the broadcast possible. Any final thoughts, Whitney?
Just want to thank everyone for coming today, and thank you, Adrian and Chris. So this has just been an exceptional conversation. I'm so excited to see where our industry is going to head over the next few years. I think there's so much hope and so much opportunity for all of us. And so if I can ever be of assistance to anyone in any capacity, whether it's career development, mentorship, or tech advice, I'm happy to help. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, email me. I can share that with you. But again, thank you both for having me on today. This was a great discussion.
Chris, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I can't wait to see you again in person, Whitney.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you out to Atlanta for, one of the things we're kicking off this year is more dinners and coffees and lunches. So love to have you be a part of it. Do you make it out to Atlanta much?
I do. I feel like I used to live in Atlanta when that was my territory way back in the day. So we do. We have some deals in and around Atlanta, and would love to come and see you and be a part of those events.
Let's do it. Yeah, there's, it was a overlooked market for me, and now seeing all the technology. So yeah, definitely can't wait to see you, and definitely looking forward to seeing you on stage again soon. So excited for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Have an amazing afternoon, everyone. Thank you all.